Recording in progress. Those are like new ubiquitous words, right? When earlier it was you've got mail, now it's you're recording in progress. Hi, everybody. This is Nicole Lee. I'm the alderman of the 11th Ward. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this first of what I hope, and as Aaron said a little while ago, the first of many conversations for the community. With respect to some incidents that have happened. We're going to be talking about race and hate crimes and other things that have been going on in and around the community in light of recent incidents of racist graffiti that was placed on a local business owner, Black-owned business, Cook It Mama Cafe, and other locations actually in the ward. Within days of that incident happening, BLDM for Black Lives Don't Matter was tagged on at least 3 other places in the ward. That's maybe not as widely known, but we were keeping an eye out for these instances and worked with the city immediately to have everything removed. Hi, you're back.
Sorry, I'm back. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. We were just getting started. So as I said, in light of the incidents that have happened in the ward, and I think many other things have happened in between then that I think, folks might want to have a conversation about. I really wanted to create a space for people to have an open discussion about concerns around the racist graffiti and our community and the kind of community that we're trying to build here together. So I invited Sydney Blakely to come join us for this conversation. She'll be with us in a few minutes, but to facilitate tonight's conversation, because it's not about me, I wanted to bring some professionals in. So I have with us from the Chicago Commission on Human Relations, Norman White. He's going to tell you a little bit more about specifically the line of work he's responsible for. And then I also have Abby. I'm going to try your name, and you're going to tell me if I'm going to use Sabiu. Close enough?
Yes.
Okay. From the Chinese American Service League and the Anti-Hate Action Center that they run there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them for just some brief introductions about who they are. And hopefully by then, Sydney will have joined, and then because she's next up on our agenda there. So go ahead.
Well, good evening. My name is Norman White. I work for the Chicago Commission on Human Relations. It's a complete pleasure to be here. It's really an honor for me to be here. I love Bridgeport, let me tell you. I've gained a few pounds there, and I'm going to continue to do that. But let me just tell you a little bit let me just ask you a question. I mean, how many folks here have heard about the Commission on Human Relations? All right, we got 3. Well, normally people don't know about us, and we're trying to get our name out there, especially in the times that we're living in. But pretty much the Commission on Human Relations, what we do is we fight discrimination in the city of Chicago. For example, it breaks down in 2 sections. There's a proactive section and a reactive section of the commission. For example, if people feel that they've been discriminated in the area of housing, public accommodation, or employment, they can file complaints for free at the Commission on Human Relations. And we do have a language service, a language line, if people need that service too. The proactive side of the commission is the one that I work for. I specifically am the hate crime victim advocate in the city of Chicago. So for example, if a hate crime happens in the city of Chicago that is notified to the police, it comes to our office and we do the victim support. We also have a team of folks that if there are community tensions based on race, sexual orientation, national origin, or what have you, what we do is we go out to these communities and we work with the aldermen, we work with community leaders to try to address these issues. And if we need to do mediation, we also do mediation. But I'll keep it there because I could go forever on this, and I'll turn it over to Abby.
Great. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Alderman Lee, for organizing and for this space to talk about, the recent incidents. But Abby Seaview, I serve as the Anti-Hate Action Center Manager at the Chinese American Service League. And so briefly, kind of the 4 pillars that guide our work around responding to and tracking hate crimes and hate incidents, and then also providing direct support around any mental health support at our behavioral health clinic, legal consultations through our legal services department, filling out the crime victims compensation application administered through the Illinois Attorney General's office, And we work around protection efforts with law enforcement, government agencies, legislators around those kind of needs for protections and awareness building. And around our prevention efforts, it's around our outreach and again, more of that education around what a hate crime is, what a hate incident is, where to go for help. And also having a call here, our community engagement specialist, Kevin Amaro. So thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for the intros, guys. Sydney Blakely has joined us now. She was there just a second ago. I think there she is. Hello, Sydney. No, you're fine. It's okay. So I'm going to give a couple just other ground rules, and then we'll tee up for you here as well. I'm remiss in not having said this earlier. So, this session, this community forum is meant to be a safe space for people to have open and honest conversations about what they're feeling. We want it to be respectful. So I would ask that everybody, as you're speaking, speak your truth, and remember that we're all here to, I think, make our community better and stronger. And I think part of how we do that is making sure that we can have open and honest conversations and create the safe space where people can be a little bit vulnerable about like what their real concerns are and how we get to make this a better, more welcoming place for everybody, for people that live here, for people that work here, for business owners like Sydney who are investing here. And Sydney, we wanted to invite you to come share with the people participating about what your experience was like when the incident happened, what it's been like since then for you, whether that is, hearing from the community, if you've gotten support, that sort of thing. And this is the last time you're going to hear me speak like this, because it really is for Norman and Abby to take over from here. But I really appreciate you being here with us this evening.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Sydney.
Duh. Hey. I don't know. Okay, so I'm Sydney Blakely. I am the owner of Cooking Mama Cafe on 31st Street. January 4th, I had got some vandalism with the racial slur of Black Lives Don't Matter all over my business. Since that situation has happened, I have gotten a ridiculous amount of love throughout the community and other communities. I was able to raise.
That was
You can go ahead, Sydney. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. So, since then, I have had so much support throughout the community and through various people that don't even live here. I want to say today I had a couple come from Indian Head Park, which is like, I think it's like 35 minutes from us. But everybody has been, I haven't had any hate since then or any negative experience. Even prior to the situation, I hadn't had any throughout the community. That was probably my first incident. I don't know what to say.
You're doing great. I mean, like, I think that's
Okay.
that's great to hear. I'm gonna shut up. I promised I would.
But no, like a lot of people have came. You came, some of your family members came. And I was looking at the participants. And Bria came with a group of people as well. So you guys have been like awesome support wise. Especially to have leaders within the community. But yeah, like it's been awesome. I was able to raise way more money than I had imagined or even expected to raise. I was able to put up a surveillance system. So that's been like super great. And now I am waiting for the muralist to come back out and he will repaint everything over. and bring something different to the mural that was originally there. I guess we kind of got crappy weather this past week, so he doesn't want to stand out in the cold, so I cannot be upset at him for that. But yeah, I feel very welcome now, definitely.
Could I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Just to kind of get this rolling, could you tell us how, what made you pick the 11th Ward and a little bit of your background story as to how did you get to this point in your life where you had the cafe?
So honestly, I didn't specifically pick Bridgeport. When I was searching for a location, I just couldn't find a lot of different places that were budget friendly, I should say. Budget friendly, and then I would say a predominantly safe neighborhood. And then next door to me was a laundromat at the time when I first originally picked the location. So I was like, oh, that should be a good walk-in traffic because when you sit and do laundry, sometimes you do get hungry. So that's why I kind of picked that location. And then, we have the White Sox Stadium that's in walking distance. So that was one of my main picks. And then I live in Bronzeville, so it's literally a 5-minute drive for me to get there. But yeah, that's how I ended up here.
And how has the kind of support continued? And you mentioned that there have been so many different groups and people that have come out to show you support, but kind of in rebuilding and kind of getting back on your feet, have there been any other kind of updates or any other forms of support that people have showed since the incident?
I've been reached out to through like a lot of various different activist groups, nonprofit groups, and then just a lot of people, small business owners themselves have reached out just with kind words. I had a young lady, she does notary, and then she came in and supported. She also brought me flowers. It was like really nice and like warm, just warm feeling. Um, but like it's been awesome. I keep getting little cards in the mail and stuff. So it's like different emails from people. I even had I want to say they are a funding group, an investment funding group. They even they came in and supported, and they even gave me like an achievement award for entrepreneurship. So it's definitely been quite the experience. Not the way I expected it, but still a good experience. Sorry about that. My mom was calling.
Well, I mean, that is just amazing because to hear, after such I'm sure probably kind of traumatic incident that all these different kind of groups and and you said that even like cities and towns, not even from here,
Yeah, like,
outside of Illinois had reached out and saw, I'm sure, the news coverage about what happened. So, I mean, that's a wonderful demonstration of how the community and the ward came together to support you and your business and what happened. But maybe if there's anything else, unless you have anything else to share, maybe we kind of open it up to the group to kind of maybe hear about anybody else's thoughts about what happened to, Sydney's Cafe and what you all thought.
If you wouldn't mind, just raise your hand. That way we can call on people individually.
How about if I put out a question out there? When you folks first heard about what happened at Cook It Mama Cafe, what did you think or what was your initial reaction to it?
is that for me?
For anybody who wants to
Oh,
Yeah. So I see Aaron's hand raised. So Aaron, why don't you go ahead? Aaron, and when you speak, can you please just introduce yourself, like who you are in the community, where you don't have to give your address or anything like that, but I'd love to know who you are and why you decided to join the conversation tonight.
Yeah, hi. Also, my address is a public record because I'm running for office. So my name's Erin Vogel. I'm running for one of the ECPS district council positions. Sydney, I'm so sorry that you experienced this. And like when I saw this, I thought, great, it happened to yet another Black woman-owned business in Bridgeport because House of Melanin has experienced two things, right? So it was not a surprise to me, and it was just another like, yep, this is still the community with the deeply, deeply rooted racism that has been here since, hundreds of years, right? So it was really sad, but not surprising, but I think what I loved again is, and similar to House of Melanin, is like we have to take care of our own, and we have to take care of our small business owners, specifically our Black small business owners, right? So I do love the community support you got, but like Norman, to answer your question, it was a feeling of, yep, this is happening again, right? And just to share with you guys, on Monday, a rock was thrown through my window that had a Black Lives Matter sign in it, right? So like,
Are you serious? I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's, this is what's happened. And I'm not the only person that this has happened to with a Black Lives Matter sign that's gotten something thrown through their window, right? So like, this is not a new occurrence for Bridgeport. So this to me was like a nice, not a nice reminder, but a reminder of the community that I live in.
Hmm.
Mimi, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Mimi Wirakocha. I live on Low and 33rd. I've been in the neighborhood for about 5, going on 6 years now, but born and raised on the north side of Chicago. And I am involved with Bridgeport Alliance, which I know we have a few members here. So I think similar to what Aaron said, I remember reading it on, I think actually on Instagram, I think Sydney, maybe on your page, and just thinking, yeah, okay, this is how we welcome like our Black owned businesses in this neighborhood. And it was, I think, really embarrassing for me because I live here and I chose to live here, right? And I think when I moved in here purposefully because I knew that there was a lot of history here and I wanted to be part of positive change and to that history of racism and prejudice and stereotyping and just unwelcoming sentiment that I myself have also felt as a woman of color in the area. But I was also very sad for you, Sydney. And again, like Aaron said, I'm hoping that the voices of those who want you here has rung a lot louder than the voices of those who are just ignorant and yeah, have hatred in their hearts. Unfortunately, though, I don't know. I think with what Aaron said, like House of Melanin like they had 2 incidents within not even I think a year, right? And I don't know I felt just really discouraged because I didn't know what to do, and at the same time really angry, but also really motivated to do something, like to say something, to pour in time and energy and effort, and to share it as much as I could and to tell as many people as I could to actually give you more business. And I think also because you recently opened, right? And so maybe not a lot of us knew that you were there and had given you business. And so I also regretted not having done that before this. I wish I had done it from the beginning, but yeah, it was really sad and not surprising, unfortunately, given where we stand. Yeah, one thing it has done for me though is it has made it harder and harder for me to tell other people that I live in Bridgeport.
Thanks for sharing that, Mimi. Ambria, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm, echoing what others are hearing, and I'm really glad to hear the way people put these things together. Although I am proud about how the community has come together to embrace people who have faced this kind of thing. It doesn't erase the fact that it happened and that there are people who are doing these things, people who I imagine are local. And we just have to recognize that it's part of a pattern. I think even going back to 2020, after a Black Lives Matter protest that, I attended in Brownsville, that was completely peaceful. We had people wielding weapons out on the streets, hanging out with police officers who were, chopping it up with them, profiling and harassing people either because of their race or because they look alternative, because they look like people who might support Black Lives Matter and its movement. Even thinking about how because Sydney's shop was unfortunately actually labeled with BLDM, it was very easy to recognize as something that was a racist act. While what happened to Brittany at House of Melanin, because there wasn't anything left as like a hallmark, we all said we know what's up, right? That they've been vandalized twice. But I think that the sort of reaction was a little bit different because it was more implicit. So we have to make sure, I think, that we are also really addressing the implicit racism, even if, slurs don't end up getting graffitied. And I really wish that Brittany was here tonight. And I don't know if she was invited to this or not, but I think definitely just recognizing that this is something that's ongoing. And I don't think it's going to end without more action, but I'm very heartened by how many people are coming together to try to address it.
Thanks for that, Ambria.
Yeah, one thing that, I do want to say, about what Aaron just shared and Ambria and the incidents that have happened, it's just very important that the police are notified when this happens, because nothing is too small to be reported. Because if you don't report it, then it never happened and it can't be addressed. So I always stress the importance of always notifying the police of incidents like this.
Yeah, and Alderman had shared earlier that there was other graffiti that had been reported to the office too. So the community seems to be looking out for other instances of hateful speech and those instances of racism. And so it's good to know that a lot of the community already kind of knows where to go, but there's always room to kind of keep educating people and informing people on how to reach out for help and how to report these incidents, because as Norman said, it's helpful to monitor this behavior and this pattern and this and the actual evidence that we can collect to show of this hateful activity in the ward. So I would echo, what Norman said, is that we can continue to encourage everyone to look out for each other and look out for other signs of hate.
Yeah, I was really, so as you just mentioned, Abby, there were several other instances of BLDM being tagged multiple places within days of what happened to Sydney. And we got those calls in from the community, which I think felt really good to me, that other people from the community were seeing these things and were equally as disgusted with, what was written. That to me, even in small ways, is progress, because these instances apparently had happened earlier in the summer to at least one other person, and they just didn't necessarily realize what it was. They just phoned in the graffiti 311 call, not necessarily filed a police report. Norman, can you talk a little bit about, so one of the things that Ambria brought up earlier was just with the House of Melanin. And I'm sorry, I didn't personally invite her. I invited Sydney, and this was posted publicly. So I'd love to have her come back and join a conversation later on. I think that would be actually a really great conversation to have. But can you talk about the distinction between what an actual hate crime is versus what, just tagging something with graffiti is a misdemeanor, not an additional charge, if you will. So if you can talk about that a little bit, I think that would be helpful context for folks on the call.
Yeah, pretty much a hate crime is also known as a bias motivated crime or a bias crime. And it's a prejudice motivated crime which occurs when a perpetrator targets a victim because of their membership or perceived membership of a certain social group or race. For example, if I'm walking down the street, let's say I have my cell phone on my hand and I'm approached by three guys. They assault me, they take my cell phone. I call the police and, I report it. It's just an assault. But for example, the same scenario, if I'm walking down the street, I'm targeted by three individuals They assault me. They say, we don't want your kind. We don't want Black people here. We don't want your kind here at all. They take my phone. It's pretty much, you know, the same assault. But when the motivation was my race, that's when it elevates it to hate crime. And that's a felony. And one of the things that makes hate crime unique is that a hate crime is not just a crime against an individual, but it's a crime against an entire community of people. It sends a message to an entire community of people. Also, you don't necessarily, don't have to be a member of that particular community in order to be a victim of a hate crime. Let's say if I'm in Boys Town and I'm walking with a male friend of mine, people assume that I am gay, and they attack us because they assume that we're gay, although we're not gay. The motivating factor was the fact that they thought we were gay. So that becomes a hate crime also. So you don't have to be a member of the group that's targeted. And let me just tell you how our office gets the hate crime reports. For example, if a hate crime happens out on the street, the police are called. The police on the scene takes the report. And if you use the language, they said, well, I was targeted because I was Asian, I was targeted because I was Black, gay, whatever, that red flags it, and it goes into a special unit within the police department called the Civil Rights Unit. And once they get it, our office gets it. And we do the victim support. If we have to go to court, follow up, you know, we do all that too. But that's why it's so important that people, you know, report these things. And we're also want to educate people on what a hate crime is, because if you don't know what a hate crime is, how do you report it also? And we also assume that most of the hate crimes that are happening out there aren't being reported. And that's the challenge that we have, is to make people aware and for them to know where it can be reported.
And thank you, Norman, and thank you, Aaron, for sharing in the chat that there are definitely some members of the community that may not feel comfortable going to law enforcement to report. And so at the Anti-Hate Action Center, Castle, you know, we really do want to offer that safe space if alternatively, if of course an individual is not comfortable contacting law enforcement. So we, you know, try to definitely work with law enforcement in general, but, you know, we recognize that we want to make sure that we're accessible to everyone and make sure that they at least get the support they need. And with the data tracking that we have, we, you know, once we are able to kind of coalesce all of our data, we do plan on sharing it with stakeholders so that we can share the data that we've collected, even though it may not, you know, have been reported, those reports with law enforcement. There's a question in the chat from Diana. What can we do about the racist sentiments, primarily anti-Black sentiments that runs deep in this area before another hate crime happens? Maybe open it up to the group for discussion.
Well, I think that just the fact that people are calling the alderman's office and reporting these kind of things is a step in the positive direction, because, you know, like I said, a lot of these things, although they might be non-criminal, it's very important to document it, because once it's documented by the police, if there are incidents like this that are non-criminal, that are racial nature, what have you, if you get enough of those areas, the police department can look at this and put a special attention to the area, because sometimes these type of attitudes could lead to a possible hate crime too. You know, and one of the things that we also do with our community partners, we try to go out there and we try to educate folks in terms of how to report and how to identify hate crimes too.
I think participating in this conversation is a nice start as well. I'm hoping to have many more of these and have this be an ongoing conversation. But I think, Diana, your question runs right through the heart of, I think, why I wanted to pull this group together, because we can't continue to step over the things that exist in our world that I think where people seek to keep us apart or to gosh, to spread hate. I mean, there's no other way for me to say that part of it. I think a lot of things are built out of fear, and people who just aren't willing to get to know and connect with other people just as human beings. I mean, we all live in this community. I would say that everybody wants to live in a safe community where they can feel free to be themselves and bring their best selves to the community and have that be acceptable. This is yes, I agree with you, Ambria, absolutely. And I think we can hopefully we can be the spark to all of this, right? Because what I'd love to see grow out of this is not just us talking in this forum, but also getting out in the community. I think our best chance at that is really with young people. I know for me, my own personal experience with that was when I was sent to public school, and I was put in an environment where I got to be around kids that didn't look like me. Having grown up in Chinatown, I was only surrounded by like little Chinese kids. And there was a lot of fear there back then too, about people who were different. So, you know, the fact that I was able to relate to other kids that didn't look like me based on the things that we were interested in, like scratch and sniff stickers and garbage pail kids. I'm totally aging myself right now. But, you know, that was the best thing for me. And it really opened my eyes to, you know, the rest of the world that's out there. So I think, you know, for me at least, you know, I think that having uncomfortable conversations is actually a good thing. You know, ask people to say more. Like if they make a comment that doesn't feel right to you, maybe use that as an opportunity to say, oh, can you say a little bit more about that? Like, tell me more. Where does that come from? Erin's smiling right now. But I think this is the type of stuff that we need to do more of, and like create these opportunities for people to get together in person, and doing positive things in the community, and just really showing that you can't judge an entire race of people based on maybe one or two experiences that you've personally had that may not have been very positive. That, you know, we don't want anybody to judge us in that way. And I think we just have to do more you know, it's a little bit of it's actually a lot of the golden rule that we all know, right? So what we were taught when we were kids, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It's pretty basic at the end of the day.
And also supporting some of the work that of our partner organizations have already been doing around kind of those healing circles and community conversations. People Matter is one. CBAC is one, working with the youth to talk about that kind of anti-Black sentiment, and just really, again, having more of these conversations. We shouldn't just have one. We shouldn't just have one, of course, after a hate incident or a hate crime. So we should be constantly having these conversations. So I would encourage, that we all kind of work together to continue talking about these issues.
I'm raising my hand. I don't know if you can see me. No, Nicole, I was laughing because I feel like curiosity will let racists tell on themselves. And that's why I was giggling, right? Being curious with some questions of, hey, what do you mean by that? Digging a little bit deeper. And just to share that Bridgeport Alliance has been hosting race-based conversations, specifically how we heal, since 2020. So we've been having conversations on this already. But I think one thing that's important to note as well is that acts of racism are beyond just person to person. And what I would love to really hear is talking about systemic racism, which some people don't believe actually exists, which to me is wild, right? But I think we need to be a little bit louder about how systemic racism is impacting our communities as a whole, not just isolated incidents of racism. Because it's more like it's the air we breathe, it's our school systems, right? So sharing a little bit more about how this impacts our community as a whole, because racism is hurting all of us, right? White folks included. But yeah, I just wanted to share that as well. I'd love to hear more conversations about how our systems truly are racist, and how we as Bridgeport as a whole can work to transform them.
I got a question for the group. Is everybody here a resident of Bridgeport? For those, what attracted you to Bridgeport? I'm interested in finding out. Or the 11th Ward.
Okay, Diana shared in the chat, she grew up here.
For me, I teach on the southwest side in Gage Park, and I grew up on the northwest side, so I was looking to move somewhere to the south side. And Bridgeport was affordable, and I liked kind of the feel of the neighborhood. That's what brought me here.
And Aaron shared similarly, could afford a home here.
So it's affordable to some. I've got a question. What can the city of Chicago do more to address racism in your mind? Because one of the things that we're working on is we're trying to do a pilot program so that there's alternative ways of reporting hate crime, because normally it happens through the police or they call me, but sometimes, you know, people may not want to interact with government or the police. And we're trying to start a pilot program to see if we can capture more of what's going on out there. And my question is, what do you think? Do you have any ideas of how the city could you know, could reach that goal? All right, Mimi, it's all yours.
Thank you. Well, yeah, if I may, I think so. Yes, to what Aaron had put in the chat, that it's not everyone feels safe to call law enforcement, police when they're targeted by hate crimes, and I think in the 11th ward specifically, in the summer of 2020, when there were, you know, these groups of individuals claiming to be neighborhood watch and were out patrolling the streets with bats and I mean, literally the word stereotyping people based on, I don't know what factors, but all external factors, and then threatening them or, you know, with the bats or, you know, the legs of chairs. And when all of that was happening, when people were quote unquote neighborhood watch and wanting to, I don't know, what they believe is protecting their city or their neighborhood, people did call the police to report that, right? People were reporting that they didn't feel safe. And there are actually, I want to say, like transcripts or recordings where the police did not respond appropriately to that, where they were actually laughing it off or saying it's just kids. And so I think specifically in this ward, if it was me, knowing what I know happened with our police, I would not ever call the police because I wouldn't feel safe. I wouldn't want them to, in the face of my own hurt or fears, for them to laugh at me. And so I really do think exploring alternative ways of which we can report these incidents would be very, very helpful to our, specifically to our community and our neighborhood here.
I could talk about this for hours, so I'll make it really short. But like, again, for the city, like Chicago's the second most segregated city in the United States. I think looking at our deeply rooted racist history, right? If we want to solve hate crimes in this, like we need to go to the roots of why they're happening in the first place and put in real systems to heal, right? Investing in the infrastructure and education, like we have to take care of the people who have been long left out of conversations and create systems that truly heal instead of ones that perpetuate harm.
Thing that I'm kind of thinking about is, you know, Alderwoman Lee, you said like you said something about education starting early, and Aaron was just mentioning education, and and I know Ambria said, like, a lot of people, you know, that need to have this conversation aren't in the room. And so thinking about the role of schools and education in this, and you know, there's, for public schools, various mandates about different types of education that need to happen, groups you need to learn about. At some point, you know, how much that's implemented may vary, but I'm also curious about the Catholic schools or other non-public schools and what conversations they're having, since they aren't subject to necessarily some of the mandates that, like, I know teaching at CPS high school that I have to fulfill, and how those conversations are happening, since we do have a lot of people that utilize private education in this area. So just in general, from all schools, what kinds of work is being done with the youth, since that's when we do have them, to teach them how to be inclusive and to think of racism as a complex system and understand their role in dismantling it. I think that's a question to ponder, of how we can, you know, how education can be part of the solution more.
Yeah, I agree, Charlotte. It's a great point. I think, you know, as you were speaking, you know, maybe one of the things that we could look at doing together, the Bridgeport Alliance, the ward, whoever else wants to like get involved in this, is to find some sort of service project where we can bring kids together from all the different schools that we have in the ward, both Catholic and public, private Catholic and public, that we have in the ward. I also think that, you know, people also need to understand how diverse our ward actually is. Norman, I think you have some statistics about this, right? I think a lot of people may have some misconceptions about what the makeup of the ward is.
Yes, I do. The population as of 2022 was 52,496. Percentage of people that are white are 25.3, Black 2.75, Asian 50%, and Hispanic is 19.5%.
I would, yeah, just echo and agree that education is really key and kind of the common denominator in really getting to, you know, hopefully the roots of racism early on in a youth's life. And so, you know, would love to partner with the Bridgeport Alliance and others that have been already working on that kind of education piece, and working to just really cast a wide net in trying to also target those communities that would really benefit from learning more.
We've also
Yeah,
got, sorry, go ahead, Norman.
no, I'm also a big proponent of education, because, you know, a few years back when there were issues with the Muslim community, remember all the terrorism, all the stuff that was going on around the world, what we started doing is we started working with that community. And we started doing iftars during Ramadan. I don't know if you guys are familiar what an iftar is, but they fast, and at the end of when at sundown they break bread. So we started doing iftars along with the Muslim community, and we're inviting people of all races, of all religions to join in. And we did that at police stations too. So there was a, you know, once they sat down and broke bread, and this is just one example of something that we did, you know, it's very interesting because people realize that we have much more in common than differences. And we did that for about 5-6 years. You know, obviously COVID kind of threw everything off too. But that was very, 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 it brought people together and got people to have conversations too. One of the things that we've also done is we've gone into Chicago public schools and we've done workshops to students and also to teach parents, you know, to teach them and get a conversation going. So I think it's important. The challenges that we face is, you know, when people say, hey, let's talk about diversity and inclusion or hate crimes or whatever. It's not really a sexy topic that people normally line up to listen to. But I think if you get the conversation going and we do it often enough, it can become the new normal. That's just my thought on it.
Grace, you've got your hand up.
Hi, everyone. Grace Chan McKibben, Executive Director of Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community, CBCC. And Abby had mentioned that we've been doing holding conversations about race and systemic racism for a couple of years now. So would love to partner with any other groups or any individuals here that would like to join that conversation. And then this past year, we've also been doing intentional gatherings, movie discussions, art co-creation, dancing together with different cultures. I think Bridgeport Alliance actually was our partner in one of the movie discussions about the movie Minari. So, I think that, like Norman says, making intentional discussions and considerations of race be normal, because I think there's so much worry about bringing up the subject that folks would rather not talk about it and not acknowledge that there may be an issue, or that, and without addressing it first, which is why I'm so glad that Nicole, you are holding the space, and that Norman and Abby have uplifted all these topics. I think that it's good to think about it and support each other. Thanks.
Just to add to, so while of course the Anti-Hate Action Center was created as a result of the uptick in anti-Asian hate, we welcome everyone, welcome any hate crime survivor, and we definitely have been trying to expand our outreach beyond Chinatown, so really statewide. And so we have been also piloting kind of some workshops ourselves, and we are offering to the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce and other chambers for kind of hate crimes 101 workshop, when we know, based on the data that we do have, that a lot of the verbal harassment happens in public places, such as businesses. And so we are trying to prioritize kind of some of that outreach with more of our public entities as well. But with the youth too, we've piloted some also anti-Asian bullying workshops with our Castle Youth, with some other youth programs here in Chinatown. And so we would love to partner and work with others too to expand that conversation beyond anti-Asian hate, of course. And so, of course, when all of us are working together, we're all trying to combat all forms of hate.
Yeah, and I know we're running out of time here, but for the next time, one of the things that I'd be interested in, and hopefully recruiting a few more people to come and join us and to be vulnerable with us a little bit, because I think that a lot of what I see and what I hear from people as I'm just sort of walking around in my life, and especially in this role, is there's a lot of fear that people have, and I don't, while I may not agree with it, it's a real experience for people, and I don't want to discount that piece of it. Yeah, especially for immigrant populations, they come to a place like Chinatown when they first come to this country because it's a safe space for them, right? People speak my language. I can get the foods that I want. I feel comfortable. I feel safe here. And if your only experience with a different type of person in a Black or brown community is getting robbed and hearing about all the crimes that are being committed, unfortunately, the ones that are sort of talked about the most are going to be the ones that are perpetrated by Black and brown communities. It creates a lot of fear. And I think that fear, adds fuel to the fire with all of this too. Obviously, we know a few people, and that's more than a few people, but those people aren't necessarily reflective of an entire, race of people. Look, we know that there are bad people of every different color and race. So, what I'd like to have more of a discussion on, and to have the opportunity to really sort of tease that out a little bit. Grace, I know you and I have talked about this a lot. Just the fear factor that contributes to what ends up being very racist behavior too.
I know we're almost wrapping up, but I've got a question. Are there any misconceptions about the 11th Ward that you guys feel are out there?
I mean, that's tough, you know. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are progressive and wonderful people here. There's a reason a lot of us stay here. But also, a lot of the narratives that people say about problems with racism here are true. So that's kind of hard to tackle. That's not the only thing that's true about this area. So I think maybe that is something to keep in mind, that there's lots of different kinds of people with lots of different political opinions here. And I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand. Nobody else was talking at that point.
Okay, no, you're
Sorry.
good. You're good.
Diana has her hand up.
It's not really a misconception. It's more like something that doesn't get acknowledged much, is that like when people think about like racist behavior in the 11th Ward in Bridgeport, they mostly think of like the older generation in Bridgeport, the ones that are like, have been here for generations. But the Chinese community here is also very anti-Black, and we need to like really acknowledge that to like as a starting point to even get anywhere. So I guess it's like an add-on.
Thank you for sharing. Grace.
Yeah, I think I do agree with what Diana is saying, just like what Nicole was saying, that when the Chinese Americans, that immigrants that come to this community are seeking a place where they think there will be other people like them. So I think that it is not a generational, not necessarily the racism or the prejudice is not necessarily solved by generational change, because there are successive waves of new immigrants coming in. But I think that we also, as we talk about all this, I know that we really want to talk about the future and the fact that Bridgeport is now a diverse community, or more diverse community than what people realize. We do want to acknowledge the history. I think, I first came to Chicago in the 1980s. In the 1980s, people of color of any race, Asian, Latino, and Black, will not go to Bridgeport because of the very real racism that's in there, that's in the neighborhood. So I think that we celebrate some of the changes and some of the new things that have come together. I actually today just had the opportunity to visit the new the renovations of the Ramova Theater, and there's a lot of exciting plans and a lot of different groups coming together. So there is definitely new energy and new commitment to having diverse groups all come together. And I think that we should work on the positive energy and move forward while acknowledging the past, but we shouldn't dwell on the past.
Well, we're right at 7:00. It's 7:01. I want to thank Norman and Abby for moderating tonight's session. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. It's a small start, but it's a start coming out of this ward office. I understand that other organizations have already been doing this work. I thank you, Bridgeport Alliance and the CBCAC and Castle and the Commission on Human Relations, for all that you're already doing. I most certainly want to continue the conversation, because I think that there's a lot more that brings us, a lot more that we have in common as a community. I think, people who live here, as I said earlier, you know, they want to live in a safe community where they don't have to worry about walking around. They can bring them their best selves, no matter who they are, who they love, what they look like, to be a part of this community. And I think that's what's really beautiful about the 11th ward of today. The ward has been changing for a really long time. We have representatives, you know, at every level of government, representing every race you can imagine, that cover the 11th ward. So I for one am going to continue pushing to have these conversations, and hopefully every time we bring a few more people with us. So with that, I really appreciate everybody joining us tonight, and hopefully we'll get together for the next one. We'll have to figure out what the next one looks like. So I'll reach out to others on this call to see what sort of forum or event we can create to have this be a little bit more interactive. Maybe once it gets a little bit warmer, everybody can get together and, you know, break some bread together as well. Because I think food brings everybody together usually. So if we can manage that, I think it'll be a great way to mix it up and have some more conversation. So thanks everybody. Have a good night.